Hi, everyone. This is a Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Enjoy. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the Leadership with Heart podcast. It's Heather, and it's Friday, and I'm super excited to be speaking with Barbara Medina. She actually was referred to me from a longtime listener and supporter of this podcast, Maria Perez, and I asked her again, who do you think would be just like some great guests? And so she gave me a list of like 4 people. And then I said, okay, listen, it needs to be people who manage other people actively in the workforce. And she said, well, this person is not actively managing people in the workforce, but she's the one who led all the other people I just referred to you. And she is an amazing woman. You have got to talk to her. So I thought, I have got to have you on the show, Barbara. So that's why you're here. Welcome.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm going to have to say that your longtime listener is too generous and too kind. I had a great ride.
Well, for those who listen, just so you know, Barbara is kind of semi-retired and not working, and leading all those people as she was before, which I know is unique when most people listen to the show. But I decided to have it in a room because Maria just had so much good to say and about your leadership style. And so I would like to talk about that. What do you think it is that framed up your leadership style so much so that you'd have somebody who you led years ago, just still have such positive emotions around your leadership and all the other people that you were able to raise up? I just want to hear about it. How did you think? How did you come about in that way as far as your leadership style?
Well, I was really blessed in that I was raised on a small family farm in Southeast Colorado. I'm one of 9 children. My mother's family has been, I would say she arrived with Captain Kirk on Starship Enterprise to Colorado. And my father came as a child from Mexico at age 7. My grandparents settled in Southern Colorado and had many enterprises, including a farm. So I think that they modeled for me, my parents and the community I lived in. And, growing up on a small farm, it's a risky enterprise to be farming anyhow. But I think the collaboration, the mutual sort of benefit, the visioning and the mission, like we're all in this together, or being first generation on one side, it gives you a hunger. I'm not sure how to. Your parents sacrifice so much for you, for a better life for you. They sacrifice their home, their community, their family members, and sometimes even the pets that they left behind to make sure you had a better chance. And so you honor that sacrifice, and you're always reminded of what obstacles they faced, my parents faced, and my grandparents in settling in the United States. And I think those things, just kind of are like a hot forge in the sense that they teach you about collaboration and they teach you about service. In many spoken and unspoken ways. You have to work together on a farm, and everyone works, even the littlest one makes a contribution. And so I think that I operated from that everybody has something to provide this organization, whether you're supervising 12 people or 186 people or 300 people. Every person has something to bring to that organization, and you have to help them see that if they don't already. And you always have to be really clear about mission and your vision, and it has to be shared. And on a farm, it's about getting the crop out in time. It's about working with animals and making sure they survive rough winters. And so there's that. I think that was the genesis of if you would call it a leadership style. I was raised that way. My parents and grandparents were great examples of service and of collaboration.
So I'd like for you to tell the listeners a little bit about you, because I know that you were, yeah, to some extent, and I apologize, but I know that there was something related to immigrant communities, right? Working with
Right.
folks that were okay. And so I'd love to just walk us through a little bit, your journey and the work that you were doing, before you retired, and how you were able to lead and raise up all these other leaders that Maria referred to me.
Well, as I shared with you that being a daughter of first generation on my father's side gives you a deep appreciation for the sacrifice and the commitment of immigrants to improve their lives. And so I started my career as a public school teacher. I taught public school for 19 years. And then, when you complain about things, they put you in charge of things. So I became the department chair. Then I became this, and then I was coaching. And so I think it became with working with kids, working with young people as a teacher, and realizing that not everybody had the same start place, and trying to create opportunities so they could improve. And so from becoming a teacher, I snuck in the back door to administration and public education. And then when I went on to get my doctorate, I was really concerned about the larger picture of policy. So I hold a PhD from the University of Colorado in education policy and practice, and really was focused on equity studies. As a professor, minded my own business again in a small college, and was asked by the president to serve as the interim chair of the department, and then went on to serve as a department chair at the college level, as a district administrator. So I think that in the back of my mind, I was always about making sure that the children I taught had the same opportunities I did and the same access.
That's awesome. And then how did you end up coming into contact with kind of Maria and the whole group of people? There's like 2 or 3 other people she referred to. She's like, oh no, she led them too. Were they all inside of kind of the University of Colorado circle?
Once again, I was leading my own business school, Adams State University in Southern Colorado. And we had a visit from the State Department. And at the end of your visit, they ask you for some time to debrief. And I was ready. I was thinking, we're not going to get certified. We got this to work on. We got this curricular issue. And the folks who were doing my exit interview said, you're doing okay, but we have an issue. And I said, what's the issue? And they said, you got to come to Denver. We need you to run this department. We've had some changes. And I said, oh, wow, that means we got our licenses and everything. And they're like, yeah, but you got to come to Denver. And so when they exit interviewed the president of the college, they shared with him that they felt like I could make a contribution. And so it was there was another department chair that I think had a position in state government. And so it wasn't unprecedented. So they approved a leave of absence, and I went to Denver as a director of English language acquisition for the state of Colorado, which meant that I ran the Department of Title III, which is to support English language learners and to support migrant students, migrant education. So I went in as a director. And, I always jokingly say I survived a couple of governors and a couple of commissioners. And one of them, Dwight Jones, who I just learned is recently appointed as interim superintendent of DPS, he came to me and he said, I think I need you on my team in a different role. And so under his leadership, I served as an assistant commissioner at the Colorado Department of Education. And I was the first Latina to be in that role in an appointed position and to last 6.5 years. And I always tell folks, I just didn't want to be the last person to have those opportunities. And so that kind of was, when you have an appointed position, you have a very short period of time. And you are knowing that when you have that pen in hand, you have to be very, very, you have to be very directive, but you also have to be really clear that you have a short mission, because politics comes and goes. And so power can change swiftly. And so you're in a leadership position, you better ride it, and you better ride that well and be as bold as you can. I used to tell my team, I need you to be brilliant, I need you to be bold, but I need you to be brief. And they would really laugh and say, I need 2 seconds. And I'd say, let's walk and talk. Let's go down, take me to the elevator or walk with yours. I would say, yeah, be brief and be bold and be brilliant, but balanced.
Oh, I love it. Now, so when you were the idea with these other people that, you came in contact with Maria and these, I can't remember the other names. Esmeralda's one, and there's one other person, but were you, when you said you didn't want to be the last one, that's when you were like trying to really focus on lifting up other leaders. Is that what was happening?
Yeah, because in the meetings that I attended, I was probably the only one person of color in many of the meetings. Um, when I testified to state legislature, I'm there by myself in front of a committee. So you're very cognizant of, wow, this does not look like my regular group. The people I roll with, my nephew used to laugh and say, "Gay." I really wanted them when my position was elevated by the commissioner, then the work that I was engaged with became elevated. And so once people always say they want more of a platform, but when you get that platform, you better run with it. And Maria was stuck behind a computer and I said, "What do you do for me?" And I would, being new to an agency, I'd walk the halls, I'd go by their desks in strange times of the day. It wasn't always about them meeting in my office or a formal review, but I'd stop by at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, and put my arm on a shoulder and say, "What are you doing today? How's it going?" And I said, "What do you do for me?" And she said, "Well, I enter data." And I said, "Oh my God, woman, you need to be from behind a computer. What are you doing?" And I realized what skill she had in working with people. And Esmeralda was a student of mine and a teacher that worked in the district when I was still professoring. And she was bright and she got it and she was dedicated. And so when you meet people like that, you have to invest your energy in them as well. And you have to help them see past what they're currently doing to see where they can make the biggest difference. And that's what all you push for every day is, where can we make the biggest difference? Where can we have leverage? And I think that was the focus.
And then with Thomas Mejia?
Oh, Tomas, he's the golden boy. He's just, he's pretty, he's smart, but Tomas also had that legacy from his parents in their lifetime. And he was from a well-known family. And I think he kind of had a little bushel over himself because he was like, "I'm a Mejia. Everybody knows our family. My dad," and giving opportunities to be successful. So I don't have to be the one talking all the time. "Tomas, can you explain our position? Tomas, will you walk with me over to the legislature? And on the way, I can introduce you to folks." I think you open doors for other people. If you get your foot in that door, you kind of keep going. And so Tomas was trying to find his own voice as a leader. And with that mantle from his own family in the Denver community, I would often say, let's go here. And folks would, visit a school and I'd say, "Why don't you come with me?" Or let's drive together. And I would try to ask him questions about where he saw himself in 5 years, how he wanted to grow, what was his plan for his personal and professional growth. And they would always, the staff would say, "We're not going to drive with you anywhere because you ask us too many questions." So Tomas was just, I could see him trying to create his own destiny. And it was a pleasure to work with all of them and with all the many people I was blessed to work with at the department. Those were fun times.
This is really rich. I mean, this talk is rich because it's almost bringing tears to my ears, to be honest. I have a second book, but it's a really big deal book that's coming out in April called The Art of Caring Leadership: How Leading with Heart Uplifts Teams and Organizations. And a couple of the things that are in there, as you go through and you're peppering through these stories, it really is showing up in this idea of pulling people up, seeing the greatness within them and pulling it out and highlighting it, not being threatened by them for what it is they bring to the table, but seeing it, unleashing it, providing that fertile territory for them to be able to just show up as their very, very best. And even if they don't know where they're going, like you are there to say, "Oh, no. Like with Maria, get behind that desk. I see there's more in you." That is just tremendous. I mean, think about organizations and leaders inside those organizations. And if we had more of that, what kind of engagement we'd have, how much more they'd go over and above to do. I mean, the amount of loyalty we would get by that. So I'm so, as you say this, I'm like, oh, now I know why she went. Now I can see it's very clear why you're here on the show, because you really do exemplify the caring leader. You just are kind of this poster child for exactly what I mean. You walk with lots of heart, tons of intelligence, lots of care. It's just right out there, and you don't apologize for it. And I love your background, the fact that you have kind of risen from this. You come from that immigrant family, you were on the small farm, and now you're the assistant commissioner in this big role. And it requires so much finesse. And at the same time, you're finessing in this political sense, and you're also really digging deep in the people that are around you as well in all these roles. So, just thank you for sharing that journey. It's quite amazing.
Well, it was, as I said, it was a good ride. My parents positioned me to be there, and their role model and their collaboration and their giving, all of us, they just, you have to recognize what people bring to the table before you can help lead them to serve with you. And it's like an invitation to a party. You kind of have to say, we're going to do some amazing things together. I can't do them by myself. And I need you to be your best self, wherever that is right now and wherever we're going to coach you up to. But you have to recognize that everybody, really, whether you're teaching 7th grade or you're administering millions of dollars in federal to make, and if they're not in tune with that contribution, you got to help them find it. But they got to find it. But that's what people did for me. So it really is a passing on. I had my own mentors, my own professors at the university, and my own colleagues that I taught with that were inspirational to me in their dedication. And so when you wake up in the morning and you realize that you're responsible for all the programs that serve kids who are learning English as a second language and their families, and it's a family situation, not a one student at a time situation, then you know that you have an obligation to do your best work, and you keep that in front of you, and that's going to drive you, and that's going to also feed your soul, because it's meaningful work, and it's work that makes a difference in the lives of kids. And gosh, you can't do anything else better with your time. What else could one do, other than to advocate for? That was a gift to me, and I'm very, very appreciative of those opportunities that others gave me.
So I'm curious.
So for me, it's passing it on.
This is something that I ask pretty much everyone that comes on the show. I always ask everyone that comes on the show, like, we can see that you're highly emotionally intelligent, that you are a caring leader. There's all this just goodness that's there. But was there ever a time that you can think of when you were not that best leader, that caring leader, where you weren't very proud of how you showed up? But then what did you do to really come out of that and be the person you are today?
Well, I think you have to live by the only mistake that you would make is not learning from it. And you also have to realize what I shared about balance and self-care. We make our worst decisions, and we treat people the most god-awful, considerate when we're overtired, when we're not rested, when we're too caffeinated, or when we haven't set our own balance around us and we are not centered. And so you have to really guard. I was jokingly saying 80 hours a week, but I did 10, 12-hour days, maybe 30 phone calls, maybe 8 cell phone calls, maybe 120 emails a day, even with staff trying to get through them. And everybody they're after your position. You happen to just be the one sitting there, but people want your time. They want your talent. They want you to spend time with them. They want you to visit their school. But you have to really protect the part of yourself that keeps you whole and healthy. Both mentally and physically, because it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And in doing a marathon, you just kind of have to envision the goal as being a little bit ahead where you thought it was. It's the end is not, I can't see it yet. And then you have to just, when you do make mistakes, you have to own them, and you have to apologize for them. And you have to steer in making sure you get better, and telling folks that you were, I'm sure at some point I wasn't as clear as I should have been with directives. I'm sure I wasn't as patient as I could have been. I had to remember that I was really influenced by Don Miguel Ruiz's comments. And I would remember that when people were mean to me or mean to the kids I served or discounting of people of color, that it was said more about them than it did about me or the people I served. And so, passion has two coins, two sides of it. What you're really passionate about can also really hurt you. And you need to make sure that you can balance that, and that you're an advocate, but you're not a fighter. And sometimes when you see the indignities that people of color suffer in the educational system or in other systems, you get angry for them and with them. But you need to temper that anger with that passion that makes it constructive for you and for them. So it doesn't kind of eat you from the inside out, because it's just not fair. And I mean, I was brushed off by some legislators that didn't care about the same things I cared about, who felt like immigrants should not receive any kind of benefits because they came here illegally. And I had to listen to that toxic language and listen to people's conversation over at the State House. And it would make me sad, but also would make me angry, but then it would motivate me that we had to be clearer about our message and why it's so important to care for every child. They're our future. And for some people, I'd have to say, look, I hope to retire one day, and I hope the kids that are funding my retirement, I hope they have good jobs. And they're not, working in low-wage, dead-end jobs and being that burden that you think they are on society. So sometimes you have to appeal to people's emotions, and sometimes you have to appeal to their pocketbooks. And you have to make sure that everyone understands that education is a great opportunity that everybody needs to have a chance at. Mm. And you need to be persistent in that. You need to have friends that you can debrief with. I always say that superintendents are like priests. They're like, they know everybody's secrets, but they can't say anything. And so leadership at that level can be very isolating. You need to know what your triggers are, and you need to know how you feed your soul so that you can continue the good work, because burnout isn't good for anybody.
There's so much goodness here. I can't even tell you. Yeah, it all makes sense. It makes total sense. I mean, the messages that are here, I needed to hear. I am sure I can guarantee you at least some of my listeners need to hear. And there's just, oh my gosh, there's so much richness. When we think about our current environment related to people of color and the racism and just the things you hear in the media, and it can be hyper negative. It can cause all these emotions. But I loved your idea of kind of tempering it with kind of passion that actually is more productive, and and then figuring out who the audience is, and having to sit in the space of listening to the language, and then figuring out, going back to strategize on what your next steps are really, I think, critical if we're going to make any change happen. And people will say, obviously, it's at the policy level, at a state, at a federal, kind of level, where we make these different impacts. But it's interesting, again, you using that language, it makes me think about everyone, individual, down to the person who's walking around a building, who might be the person who's mopping the floors, right? How, when they're hearing the language they're hearing, how are they tempering their kind of the emotions that the discussions in that realm might give them, with their ability to kind of reframe it and move forward with a strategy that helps them get further in the discussion versus bring them backward. And so there's a level of intentionality and a self-control that really comes out in this messaging as well, even just how you talk, but just how you talk about it, even though, again, there's it's self-regulation. It's emotional regulation of, oh my gosh, I'm sitting in front of all these idiots. I mean, okay, I'm not going to say that because maybe that's not the case, right? But in your mind, deep down, you're like, oh, you want to bite your tongue. But in the end, you're keeping yourself kind of stabilized, at least externally. You can maybe vent somewhere else, and at the same time, how do you take all of that emotion and put it into something more productive that actually moves a different conversation or a different solution forward? And that's what I loved about kind of all of the underlying things that you talked about. It's so much richness here.
Well, I think you have to always keep your mission and your vision ahead and your foresight. And how does this help me or help my organization accomplish our goal? They say you fall down 7 times, you got to get up 8. That there's some battles you're going to win, ones that are going to just be tough, and they're going to stay tough. And you just have to walk away and hold your head high and say, I did the best I could at the time with where I was at and where the situation was at. I was testifying to the legislature one time in a legislative committee, and one of the representatives, who shall be unnamed, from a rural area of Colorado, kept insisting on calling me by my first name. And the chair of the committee, a woman, she would interrupt and say, well, Dr. Medina, what do you think? And she kept referring to title and kept reminding this gentleman that I was a guest of the committee and that I worked for the state and that I was a friendly person, that I may have different views, but that he would please address me by title. And that was a tough conversation. That's awesome. You have to trust that there will be people in your life that when you're not able to advocate for yourself, they'll be there and advocate for you.
For the leader right now that is managing people actively, right, that's in the workplace, what would you say might be, a pearl of wisdom you'd leave them with to, to get them through their day, to get them through their week, to just inspire them to kind of keep fighting the good fight?
I know the most overused word in 2020 is unprecedented, but the sense of grief and loss and suffering and uncertainty is really at a high level. And I would say, and I coached some folks who are in leadership positions now that ask me, I would just ask them to be as empathetic and compassionate for themselves as they are with others. None of us, when you read the newspaper and here in New Mexico, we had 44 deaths yesterday. Mm-hmm. And you think of our fellow citizens who are grieving and who are perplexed as to the situation in this pandemic. All of us need to just practice some good, gentle care of ourselves and to make sure that we are emotionally well and physically well, that we're taking that time to deal with that sense of grief that's a pall over our whole society. And as a leader, to practice that by being empathetic and compassionate with others. Hold yourself to those high expectations you have of yourself, but also cut yourself a little slack in the sense that you maybe can't be as directive or as motivated as you were pre-pandemic. We're 9 months into this. This is something that is taking its toll on all of us. And as leaders, we have to start with leading ourselves. You can't lead anybody else or lead an organization unless you can lead yourself. And you have to lead yourself by practicing some self-care, by making time for quiet, making time for information, but also making time to do the things that heal you and bring you wholeness, whether it's time with your family, time with your spiritual practices, whatever those may be, time in nature to take walks, to be outdoors and to see the creation that's all around us that's beautiful. Those are the things that are going to help us get through this, and they're also going to help heal us. And I would just ask leaders to be really gentle with themselves and to practice good compassion for themselves.
Thank you so much. For those who are listening, if you just receive as much richness as I have here and from really good sage advice from someone who has been in the trenches, who has managed many people, who has been in highly political climates, please do me a favor and go ahead and make sure you share this episode with as many people as possible. I think there's so much to be learned here. And also, don't forget, for those who are listening, to go on Apple Podcast, go ahead and rate and review the show. All of that, helps us move up on the algorithm as leadership podcasts are there's a lot of them out there, but there's something special here, I do believe. And I want to make sure this gets shared far and wide. So Barbara, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. Really, it's been quite a pleasure for me.
Oh, thank you for your time and good luck with all your efforts to help build us all up as good leaders. Appreciate the time with you as well. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well. If you'd like to learn more about the work we do at Employee Fanatics around helping leaders lead with heart, go ahead and visit us at employeefanatics.com. That's employee, FANATIX.com. We look forward to seeing you. Definitely reach out to us. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter as well. We do send out a very robust newsletter with lots of great insights every single week. Be well.